We have a hard hat project here that just has a contract, a deploy script, and another script that'll let us check some values on our contract. We'll come back to that one later. Our main contract right now is very simple. It just stores a number and it's got an internal function to update that number. So the first thing we're going to do is install the AutoLoop. So we're going to do yarn add lucky machines AutoLoop, and this will install everything we need here. Right, now that everything's installed, we can make our contract AutoLoop compatible. So we need to inherit from this AutoLoop compatible contract here. Alright, so we see there's an issue here. Let's take a look at this contract. Okay, so we have this AutoLoop compatible interface. There's two functions we will need to implement. So we'll just copy those here, and then we'll paste those back into our contract. Alright, now we've got these two functions the AutoLoop needs to talk to our contract, this progress loop and should progress loop. Now we're going to want to update our contract at some interval, so let's add a variable to hold that interval here. We'll just call it interval, and we'll actually set that at the constructor. Okay, so now that we have somewhere to track that, we can put the logic into this should progress loop function. Now you see there are two values we need to return. One is a boolean loop is ready, and the other is some bytes, which is progress with data if there's any information you want to pass along. Now we're starting with the loop is ready. We're taking a look at the current timestamp and subtracting the last timestamp, which is in seconds, and seeing if that difference is greater than that interval we set in the constructor. If it is, then that will return true, which will tell the auto loop that we want the update, or false, and we don't need the update at the moment. Now, a good practice in running an auto loop compatible contract is to keep track of the updates so that you don't accidentally run the same update twice. So we have this variable that just comes with the auto loop compatible contract, this underscore loop ID. We'll see how to use that in a minute when we get to the progress loop function, but for now let's look at how we pass data along using this progress with data. So you can pass anything you want here as long as it can be encoded in bytes. So for now we're just doing this bytes ABI.encode and just passing that loop ID. But this can be as much information as you'd like. Alright, so let's head down into the progress loop function, which is what actually gets called when the auto loop wants to perform the update on our contract. So what we're going to do here is first decode that information we sent along, which is just the loop ID. So we're calling it ABI decode, passing that progress with data and telling it what type of data it is here. It's a UN256. It's a good practice to recheck your logic here just in case something got sent over incorrectly or anything. So here we're going to double check our loop is ready logic. We'll compare the current timestamp minus the last update to that interval, make sure that's greater. And we are also going to check that that loop ID we decoded is the same as the underscore loop ID. So if everything checks out now, we can call that function we have is update number, and our contract should be updated. To keep those loop IDs in sync, we're just going to also update that underscore loop ID with a plus plus underscore loop ID here, and that's all we have to do to make our contract auto loop compatible. So now that our contract is all set, we can go ahead and deploy that. We'll just use this deploy script, and you'll see that the update interval is set for 30 seconds here. So that will just set our update interval in the contract, and this should receive updates about every 30 seconds or so. Alright, so while that's deploying, let's check out this other script we have in here, this check number. And this is pretty straightforward. This is just going to call our contract here and get the current value on that. So we should be able to see it increasing. We're just going to paste the address here, and then that should work. So we can see it's deployed. So now we'll run that yarn check number. Alright, right now it is 0. So we notice this isn't updating yet. So there's one more step we need to do. we actually need to register this contract with the AutoLoop now. So let's grab that contract address again, and then we'll head over to the AutoLoop dashboard. So here we can connect our wallet, and then once that's connected, we just click on Register New Contract, and here we're going to paste in that contract address. We can set some maximum gas to use per update, and we'll pre-fund that with 1 token. Alright, so now our contract has been added. We can see that listed in our dashboard here. And if we click on that, that will open up the details view here. And we can see the admin address, how much gas we have available, what our max gas setting is. If we want to change any of these settings, we can do that here as well. We can also see at the bottom, this latest transactions will show all of the updates that have happened. So if we take a look back at that script, we can see that this AutoLoop has been working and our number is now increased to 1. So this has been registered, the AutoLoop is doing what it needs to do, and our contract is getting updated. So that's it for the setup of AutoLoop. Everything's good to go.